This is all there is. All that's happening is all there is. This is what's happening. An apparent room, apparent people sitting on apparent chairs, listening to sounds, the voice. Feelings are apparently arising, thoughts arising, anticipation maybe, wondering what's going to happen or what we'll talk about. So there's just what's happening. It is that, as simple as that. Just exactly what's happening is all there is. It's all there is. Even the idea that there's a future or past, or that you live there or you live there or whatever, is all happening in this, as this. And the suggestion here is that is empty fullness. It's not emptiness taking form as fullness, it is empty fullness. One, simultaneously, which doesn't make sense. So this message doesn't make sense. You can't understand what we're going to share together. I don't understand it. It can't be understood. It's about unknowing. We're pointing to something that's unknowable. Because in that empty fullness arises all of this, and what also arises in this empty fullness is self-awareness. Suddenly self-consciousness as a tiny child takes form like an energy. There's a sudden sense of self-identity. I am someone. And out of that grows, the child grows and takes on the experience of separation. Essentially, the experience is I am a person and life is happening to me. I am a person, life is happening to me. What is happening to me. So there's a sense of separation with everything that's happening. A sense that I am this and these things are happening to me as a person. And that sense is it grows and grows and grows, and is confirmed by lots of other apparent individuals who are in that experience as well. I'm an individual, and life is happening to me. And it's a story. I have a story, my story, your story, his story, her story. All of that is going on. And somewhere, in a deep sort of way, it's deeply unsatisfying. There's something about it that's unsatisfying. Most people wouldn't necessarily recognise that, but there is a sense that being separate from everything and having everything happening to you, living in a dualistic experience, is unsatisfying. So some people feel that quite strongly and look more deeply at why they don't feel satisfied, why they can't find fulfillment. Because the individual lives in a set of experience. It lives in a sort of dualistic wheel. It's going round in a wheel of events. One event happens, and the next happens, and the next happens. And nothing, it's all transient, it's all passing by. And so when let's say the seeker for fulfillment tries to find fulfillment, it can't find it because everything that's happening is coming and going. Nothing stays constant. Because it lives in the experience of dualism. In fact, it not only lives in the experience of dualism, but the me, the self, the I, is dualism. It doesn't enter a sort of grey cloud called dualism. It is dualism. It lives in that. That's its experience. And so every attempt that it makes to find a fulfillment that is constant is completely doomed to failure. It's completely futile because it's looking for a something. It lives in a subject-object world, so satisfaction or fulfillment is another something that it thinks that it can learn to have and live in. And that's why there's a futility in it, because it's seeking for something which is not possible to find. It's not possible to learn about and attain and experience what it really longs for. So what we're doing today is sharing in what's just been described. It's possible that the belief systems that surround the idea of self-identity, I am a person, those belief systems which take form and become very constant in the person, they might unravel they might lose their stronghold. The other thing that happens in something like this, when there's an openness to something that's beyond the self, and then there's an openness to something that's unknowable, something energetic can happen, the fixed, the contracted energy of being separate can loosen into something boundless. Apparently. Hello. So we're just sharing together, really, in a very simple way, we're sharing together the possibility that there are two realities. There's what I call the natural reality, which is just boundlessness, but there's nothing much to talk about with the boundless natural reality because it's a mystery. It can't be known, it can't be described. And then there's what I call the separate reality, which is the reality that arises and is experienced by the individual. So when the child is born, in the first year or so, the brain sophisticates enough to create or abstract a sense of identity in the human form. It's uniquely human. And that formation of the sense of individuality is brought about through self-awareness, self-consciousness. Suddenly in that first year or so, there's a sudden feeling of being someone. It's like an energy that is boundless, and then it contracts in the body, and there's suddenly a sense of being, of an energy here which the child would feel or be aware of. And as it grows, it will call itself a person. That energy is the idea, the sense of there being a person. I am a real individual, I am. And this is the world in which I experience. And I experience that world as something that is happening to me. So in a way, I am here, and the world is out there separately to me, and it's happening to me. And so the child grows up and meets a lot of other apparent individuals who are in that separate reality. It's a dreamt separate reality, very powerful sense of being someone, and it's seen in the world as normal. It's normal, but there are individuals in the world. And those individuals have free will and choice, and they live in a story. They believe that story is real. They believe they are real. I am real. They were born and will live and will die, and that journey, that story has meaning and purpose. That's what the individual experiences. And as it grows and lives in that world, so it manages to learn how to deal with the world that it lives in. So it creates all sorts of ways of presenting itself in the world. But the problem, the difficulty is that sense of separation is actually deeply dissatisfying. Most people wouldn't recognise that and wouldn't admit that, but underneath what they present in the world, there's a sense of something being lost. And some people, they feel that loss more, they're aware of it, and so they try to do something about it. They want to become, they feel unfulfilled fulfilled, really, in a way, and they want to become fulfilled. So they then become what we would call seekers. Actually, everybody that is separate is a seeker. And people seek comfort for being separate in all sorts of ways: money, politics, power, victimhood, everything is brought about to try and overcome or distract the individual from a sense of loss, a deep sense of loss. But the seeker will try and fill that sense of loss with a something. It will look for in Christianity, Buddhism, religion, psychotherapy, whatever you like, in order to try and find what it thinks it can find as a thing called fulfillment. But it still lives in a separate dualistic world, so it experiences itself as the subject and the world as the object. So it's a subject-object experience. It's polarized experience, split experience. So then, when it's wants to seek, then makes what it's seeking for also an object. I can find something called fulfillment, let's say. In order to find it, I've grown up in a world where power and knowledge is power. So I've been to school and I'm now at work and I've learned. But in order to get anything, I have to learn how to get it in some way or other. So what I need to do to find fulfillment is to find a teacher or a process or a movement or something that will help me find what I look for. And if it's not in religion, then these days there's a wealth of other apparent teachers who are promising the student that they will find what they're looking for, in simple terms. And so they go off into that process. But of course, they're working from a dualistic experience. They live in dualism. They are dualism. The self is dualism. It doesn't enter something called dualism. It is dualistic. And so they try to learn through a process that they can use to find something that they think is called fulfillment. And what we're sharing today is the possibility that the whole construct of individuality and the whole idea of finding fulfillment is completely illusory and utterly futile. Utterly futile. Because what is really longed for is not dualism, it's not a thing, it's not an object. What is really longed for is unknowable. What is really longed for can't be found, it can't be obtained, it can't be taught. So that will unravel as we go on talking together. And in a sense, the individual grows up with belief systems. I am a real person. This is the real world. Knowledge is power. And if I work hard, I'll succeed and be happy. And what may arise is that some way those firm belief systems could unravel. That's really, it's a possibility, but more than anything else, this is about something energetic. The actual contracted sense of being an individual is like a boundless energy which is utterly free, and because it's utterly free, it can also arise as a limited contracted sense of individuality that brings about this separation. It's possible that in some or other, when that contracted energy meets that boundless energy, somewhere it can expand or even drop away completely. But there isn't anything or anyone that can bring that about. It isn't brought about through any circumstance of any kind. Even in a meeting like this, it may or may not happen. Or it may be something that later on seems to arise. Anyway, we'll see what happens.
Hello. Unfortunately, last meeting they wanted to use the room for a wedding or something, and now again the next meeting, which is July, they again want to use this room for a meeting. So there won't be a meeting next the next Saturday, this July Saturday. So just to make it clear that there won't be a meeting next Saturday. And also, all there is empty fullness. So what we're talking about here is just an energy that can't be known. The energy of empty fullness. It's a mystery, it can't be understood. And that energy is, I use the word energy as everything. All there is energy. All there is everything and anything. And for me, energy is a good word. It's like aliveness. All there is aliveness or energy. This is it. This is it in this form. This is energy in the form of a room, people, breathing, thinking, feeling, sitting on a chair. It's simply energy happening. And that energy is absolutely boundless. Nothing influences it. It's completely free and wild. And it appears as everything and nothing. It's a mystery. And because it's free, it has no purpose or meaning. There's no meaning to any of this. This aliveness is utterly, wonderfully meaningless. But because it's free, energy can also be limited. And so in its limited form, in its apparent limited form, nothing is real, everything is only an appearance. In its apparent limited form, what arises in the human being is a self-awareness. Suddenly, at a very early age, after birth, suddenly there's a sense of self-awareness, a sense of me, I am real, I'm a real person. And that child goes into a world full of other apparent individuals who also feel that they are real. So it lives in this, what I call a dream. It lives in the dream of, could say, dualism. It is in the dream of being separate. I am a separate individual. The world is something that's happening to me. I am aware of the world happening to me because I live in awareness of everything. So that sense of awareness keeps me separate from everything. That wouldn't necessarily be recognised by most people, but that's actually what happens. That's the state, the dream state of individualism. And as far as most people in the world are concerned, they feel that that is absolutely real and normal. This is real, to be a separate individual in the world. So what's being suggested here is that whole idea, that whole sense of being separate and being an individual and having free will and choice and living in a story that seems to be real, all of that is a complete and utter dreamt illusion. Most people feel it's real, but what's being suggested here is that it's an illusion. And there's something else, another possibility, which completely explodes the whole idea of individuality or separation. So we could talk about how the individual seems to take form, what it's like, all the belief systems it collects around itself to believe in its life and its story. We could talk about that. And it's possible that in just talking about it conceptually and hearing a few suggestions that come from somewhere else, it's possible that that whole belief system of separation, that whole belief system of individuality, of awareness, can unravel. It may not, there's no guarantee. But the other thing that can happen in this sort of situation, where there's an openness to something that's beyond the sense of self, when there's an openness to another possibility, a terrible possibility, but a possibility nonetheless, there can be something energetic that's very freeing and boundless about that energy, and the contracted energy of being the self can melt or fall back into that hole. Because contracted energy is also oneness. Contracted energy is also the boundless in a contracted form. There is nothing that is right or wrong. There's nothing that's above or below. There's nothing that's here or there. There just is what is and is not. That's the mystery we're talking about. And just to be sure again, it cannot be known. So what you go away from here is with absolutely nothing at all. There's nothing to learn or understand about what we're discussing here, but something could possibly, apparently, collapse. We could talk about that more, but only apparently collapse. It's the restricted feeling of being an individual in a world that's separate. So this is not a teaching, nothing to learn, it's just a communication. It's an illumination of what seems to be the human condition and the suggestion that there's something else that's completely beyond that, that's somehow very confronting and also very liberating. But you can't do anything about it. The view that thinks you can do something about this simply can fall away. And there it is. Here, it's this. It's this. It's nowhere else, it's this. Hello. So what we're doing here is talking about a mystery, something that can't be known. So we'll never get anywhere this afternoon. We won't get to an answer or a result. We're only sharing what seems to happen in what people experience as their reality, and suggesting, the suggestion is that there is another reality. So in a way we're talking about two realities really. One I would call the boundless reality of empty fullness, which is a mystery. How can emptiness be full? And the other reality arises in that first reality. So the boundless reality is completely free. It has no limitation. There's nothing that influences it. It's wild, untamed, boundless everything. It's the everything that appears and doesn't appear. And there's nothing that it's not going anywhere, and it has no meaning or purpose of any kind. It simply is what is, just energy, life, whatever you like to call it, life energy. But within that, also uniquely for the human being, arises another reality which the human being uniquely experiences, and it's what I would call the separate reality, the dream, the I am dream. And so as a tiny child, when the child is, after the child is born, in the first year or two, there's because there's a boundless energy, that boundless energy can also be contracted energy. So it seems that an apparently contracted energy enters the body of the human child, and there's a sudden feeling of identity, a tightness, a sort of, whereas everything was boundless, suddenly there's a feeling of a centre here that is limited in this body. And it's brought about in a way by self-consciousness, self-awareness arises. Suddenly there's an awareness of a self. So suddenly there's a sense, I am a person. I am real, I'm a person. And as the child grows, it meets lots of other I ams. And all of these people, all of this life that it enters into confirms the sense of it being an individual that's real, I am real, and living in a story that's real. I live in a story, I was born, I am living, and I will die. And somewhere there's a sense about that story that it has some sort of purpose that can be fulfilled. And all of that feels real. The illusion for the individual is that it is real, I am real, the story is real, and the meaning and the purpose is real, and my free will and choice in that story are also real. So it grows up in that world, and that world for the individual is normal, and probably in most people unquestioned as being the reality, the normal reality. Some people feel that needs questioning. They want to look at it in a deeper way at that reality. And so they start seeking a deeper answer to how they experience living in a separate world, which for most people seems normal. And so you get people looking at religion, psychotherapy, all sorts of things around at this time, which could give them an answer to why they feel disturbed by living in that reality. What we're sharing together is the way in which that reality grows in the person, how they take on beliefs about themselves, and how they also take on beliefs about the world they live in. And it's possible that those held beliefs can begin to loosen, because there's something else being proposed here. What's being proposed here is very radical. It would not be accepted by most people in the world. It's a radical perception of reality. And it's suggesting, which is even more challenging, that the reality that people think of as real is actually illusory. And that the effort that people make to find fulfillment in that reality is utterly and completely futile, because all they're doing is going around in a circle of different experiences. Everybody's experiencing this, experiencing that, experiencing something else. Everybody is looking for a better experience most of the time. And in some way or other, that seeking for a better experience is made futile by the reality that in what they experience is dualism. It's a dualism. It's a split, dualistic experience. There's a sense of being separate in it. So it's somehow uncomfortable. And whatever that person can do about that is completely futile, because the actual person, the individual, is dualism. It isn't that when the self takes form, it enters something called dualism. It actually is dualism, and it can only exist. The self can only exist in a dualistic reality. So the idea of escaping from that reality is the idea of escape, of the me escaping from itself, which it can never do, because that's the only thing it knows. That's the only thing it can experience. So what we're doing here is exposing or illuminating that situation. But the other thing that we're not doing is offering any kind of answer, because there is no answer to that experience. And what seems to happen is that beliefs about that reality can fall away, but also energetically, the sense of being in a contracted body, in a contracted reality, can melt into the whole. Nobody can do it, but that's what seems to happen. So what we're sharing together is a discussion about two realities, really. One reality is within the other reality. The main reality is that which is a mystery. It can't be understood. It's boundless. It's the boundlessness of nothing and everything. And it can't be known. And it is everything that is, and everything that is not. And it has no limit, and there's nothing that influences it. It even makes funny noises. There's nothing that influences it, because it's completely free. There isn't a God or consciousness, all those ideas that the seeker has about a power of consciousness or the power of God to influence itself on the world. There's just energy. It's utterly free, boundless, and completely, wonderfully meaningless. It has no meaning or purpose of any kind. It simply is this. Whatever you're looking at, whatever you feel, whatever seems to be happening in this room is boundless energy. It is the boundless nothing and everything. It's nothing, it's absolutely nothing. And it appears to be everything as well, at the same time, simultaneously. So it's the relative absolute. It's not the relative, it's not the absolute becoming the relative, it is the relative absolute relative. Formless form. It's wild, mad, and completely incomprehensible. It's this. It's this. And although I'm talking in great terms about it, it's also raising an eyebrow or stepping a step. It's all of those things. Within that energy arises a separate energy, strangely enough at the moment, only for human beings. So when the child is born after the first year or so, and the energy that is boundless also becomes contracted. Because it's free, it can be limited. It can be boundless and limited. And suddenly, a sense of a limited, contracted energy enters the body of the child, apparently. And the response is a feeling of identity suddenly. Before that, there's just no identity. There's just life happening. But suddenly there's a feeling, I am real. This is supported by self-awareness. Suddenly self-awareness, self-consciousness happens in the body. I am this person. And as the child grows, it feels like it meets apparently lots of other individuals, and so it becomes more and more sure that the reality it experiences for itself is real. This is normal. This is normal. I am real. My story is real. I was born, will live and die. And that story has meaning and purpose. And I have the free will and choice to influence that story. So that's how most people live, grow up and accept life, accept the reality that they experience. But of course, they only know that reality through their own experience. The only thing they can know for themselves is their experience of themselves and the world that seems to be happening to them as a separate energy. So everything out there seems to be separate to the self. Because the self is in here, and when it meets somebody else, they are separate. They're over there, you're someone else, I'm here. I'm someone, you're someone. The tree is something, I am something. There's a relationship. That sort of experience is considered normal, but it's actually unsatisfactory. There's something about it that doesn't ever really fulfill, because the me is running around in a circle of different experiences. This is happening, and that's happening, and that's happening, and this is happening. And these things come and go, and they don't satisfy. They satisfy for a little while, and then that satisfaction falls away. So there's a feeling of disquiet. There's a feeling of loss. Something's lost in this experience of me. Most people put up with that and live with it, try to live with it. And they try to please themselves by gathering in what they can from what they experience of the world to make them feel good. So the individual seeker, or the individual that's separate, is always looking for a better experience of me. I want a better experience. For some people, they look more deeply to find out why they're not fulfilled, and to try and find something that will satisfy them. Because of course the me lives in a world of somethings. Everything's something. The tree is something. He's something. My feeling of being angry is something that's happening to me. It's something else. So when the seeker decides to look for some sort of fulfillment, it turns that goal into another something. So the idea of enlightenment or fulfillment is another something that I can have if I use the right method, or if I go to a teacher and the teacher tells me how to have what I want. So what we're sharing together here is the possibility that all that I've just described is somehow real for the seeker, but an illusion in the whole reality. It's just another appearance. It has no reality of any kind. And the great illusion that the me lives in is that it is real, I am real, the world is real, my story is real, and fulfillment is real, and I can have those things. So what we're exposing here is the possibility that all of that is illusory. And the whole effort to be fulfilled is completely and utterly and wonderfully futile, because the me only lives in dualism. It lives in a world that is going around in a circle, looking for different experiences. So all it can do is to try to learn to find an experience that's constant. Of course, it can't, because those experiences are always moving in and out, coming and going. And in some way or other, that renders the whole idea of trying to find let's call it non-duality out of dualism, is utterly futile. Mind you, most people, even seekers, get hold of the idea of non-duality and call it another something. So they look upon non-duality like they look upon Christianity or Buddhism or whatever as another something. Whereas actually the word non-duality is simply a term. It's a term pointing to the mysterious. Advaita, non-duality, is a word pointing to that which can't be comprehended. Formless form. The empty fullness. Can't be known. It's not a thing that can be known. So what can happen is we can talk about the beliefs that arise in being an individual, about the world and myself, the nature of the world, and the nature of reality. And it's possible that some of the fixed ideas that arise for the individual could unravel a bit in talking about it. This is another perspective. It's a totally radical view of this reality. And it's both liberating and confronting. The other thing that seems to happen when people are gathered together to be open, possibly open to that which is unknowable, is that there's something energetic that seems to happen to that which thinks it knows. Because the great thing about being an individual is to know everything. I want to know my girlfriend, what she does, and I want to know what it is to make money. I also want to know what enlightenment is so that I can have it and know it. But this is an opening to the unknown, unknowing. And in some way or other, that sort of anxious, motivated need to know can soften into unknowing. Hello. So the suggestion here is that this is all there is. It's always only all there is. This, what is. And what is empty fullness. It's not an emptiness that becomes a fullness. It's empty fullness, one thing. Just empty fullness. It's a mystery. It can't be recognized or understood. It's an energy that's simply utterly boundless and free. There's nothing that influences that energy. It's completely without any direction or meaning or purpose of any kind. It's simply energy. It's aliveness. All there is aliveness.
And because that aliveness is utterly free and boundless, it can also be limited. That limited energy brings a contracted sense. And when a child is born, after about a year of feeling boundless and without any sense of identity, after about a year, suddenly that contracted energy arises in the body, and there's a feeling of identity suddenly. There's a feeling of contraction, and self-awareness arises, self-consciousness arises. And when it arises, then what takes form is what I call the I am dream. I am a person. I am real. The I am dream arises. And the child grows up and seems to meet a lot of other I ams. So the whole sense of individuality becomes normal. I am an individual. I live in a world full of individuals, and I am real. Those individuals are real, and my story is real. So I was born, I will live, and I will die. It's real. All of that is real, that story. And therefore, if it's a story about me, it must have some sort of purpose or meaning. So the child grows up into an adult in that world. And it learns how to deal with the world that it lives in. It learns how to play games in the world so that it will be liked. It learns how to try and manipulate the story. And it also comes to believe that it has free will and choice to make its story better or worse. and so it lives in that world, and that becomes the normal world. But for some reason or other, for a lot of people, it becomes quite unsatisfying. There's a feeling of dissatisfaction about living in that dualistic world, about living in a world where I am the centre and everything else is happening to me. So there's this feeling that isn't satisfying or fulfilling for quite a lot of people. In fact, most people who live in that world are always trying to satisfy a sense of lack. Even those who don't acknowledge that feeling have a subtle sense of lack, which they're always trying to fill with whatever they can find to fill it with. Well, for some people, they feel they want to go more deeply and find some sort of fulfillment, to drop that sense of being separate. And so they, as they've been brought up to believe that they have to do everything that is happening, they have to learn how to make their lives better, so they also come to feel that they have to find something called fulfillment. But because they live in a dualistic world and they experience themselves as separate, then they objectify that sense of fulfillment. They think they make it another something that they have to have. I have to have fulfillment, inner fulfillment. And it becomes an object which they then believe they have to work towards attaining. So there are many, many movements, many teachings, many religions out there that promise them a path leading to fulfillment. And they follow that path. But of course it's still a dualistic path. It's still a subject-object path. So it's whatever they do, however hard they try to find that fulfillment, they can never find it because they're looking for the infinite in the finite. They're looking for something that is beyond knowing in what they can know. They've learnt to know their world, and they've learnt to know what they can do, or believe what they can do and can't do. They believe all of those things are something that comes out of their own effort. And they also come to believe that fulfillment is something that they can know or experience for themselves. So the individual is always looking for a better experience. When it looks for fulfillment, that's all it's doing. It's looking for another experience that will fulfill it. So what we're doing here is talking about the possibility, first of all, that the whole sense of individuality, the whole sense of this whole I am dream is an illusion. It comes out of an illusory perception and an illusory experience.
And the other thing that will come up here is that the whole idea of seeking the answer to fulfillment, or seeking some sort of path which will take one to a better experience, is also wonderfully, absolutely, completely futile. That's what can come up here when we talk together about the human condition, where it is, what it feels, where it feels it can go, and the other possibility that arises, which is a totally radical possibility. That we can also talk about together. But this is really about an energy that takes form at a very early age. It's about a contracted energy. So essentially, the words can, in some way or other, unravel the whole belief system that people build up about the nature of themselves and the nature of the world they live in. But that's really more a conceptual undoing that can happen. So there can be an undoing of certain belief systems that arise, and the opening to the possibility of something absolutely radical. At that level of speaking, that can happen. But more than anything else, what goes on here is utterly beyond words. It's something that's energetic. And it's not anybody's energy, it's just energetic. It is the boundless energy I talked about at the beginning. That is constantly all there is. And somewhere that contracted sense of the self in here, that contracted energy, can melt and open into the whole.